So now we're going to do the Q&A with Andreas and Brendan. We have 5 questions selected from your tweets. So please take a seat here.
Cool. Thanks.
This is so exciting. I'm so close to him. I have a phablet loaded with questions. So the first one came from a tweet that I think is really, really interesting. So Brendan, at what point did you start imagining that JavaScript could one day run and control robots or games within games or zombies in WebGL compiled from C++?
I think around the time Friends went off the air, and I lost my gig there as Chandler. No, I didn't foresee all that. I thought it was going to be a glue language, or what some people call a duct tape language, which is really, I think, not a meaningful phrase. It was going to be the little brother or the sidekick to Java, and Java would do all the applets and components and beans, and those would be in your browser, and JavaScript would just be how you glued them together, sort of like Visual Basic was to C++ in Microsoft's Windows environment at the time. But Java never really got out of the applet cage. It never loaded quickly. It never learned about the DOM. So I think that was fatal.
Awesome. So basically, JavaScript was only going to be for embedding applets. Now it's for reinventing the JVM inside JavaScript. It's pretty awesome. So another thing that comes up a lot is JavaScript, to some people, has good parts and bad parts. And now with all the ECMAScript 6 and 7 innovations and additions, it creates new opportunities for now narrowing it down again. Do you foresee that people are going to be creating JavaScript's good parts again now that we get all these new features?
I think this is true of the web in general. Like HTML has bad parts. CSS, I think we all know, has bad parts. The funny thing is, people think when you have an evolving system that if a new requirement comes into the system, you have to evolve quickly. That's not how it works in nature. You already have to have had the genetic diversity and already have evolved to survive the new disease or the new predator. So the same with JavaScript and HTML and CSS. They're going to have too much in them. They're going to have mistakes. They're going to have things that you can't remove because they already are used by some pages or apps on the web, but they can be deprecated and they can fade away. And so I just tweeted back earlier before coming on stage. I don't agree with Crockford. He's too prescriptivist for my taste. He says, there are the bad parts you must never use, and there are these little good parts that I say you should use, like the closure pattern against the prototypal pattern. It's too extreme. And JavaScript needed to have more patterns or more strength to it in order to survive for unforeseen circumstances. It needs to keep evolving as it has. So I think there will continue to be messy evolution with bad parts, and we won't even know they're bad until later. That's the killer. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah. Hello? I might add something.
Is it off?
He has no opinion. Can we?
Hello?
Yes.
Ah, now it works. All right. Yeah, I think especially the part around removing things being difficult is very true. Brendan's explanation reminded me of a property I found in a DOM in Mozilla's implementation a couple of years ago. It's called navigator.enableTaint. And Brendan added that like 15 years ago, and it always returns false because he never actually implemented taint propagation. And I asked him, kind of yelling across the desk, like, what the hell is this thing, and what does it do, and why is it here? And in my moment of like attempted purity, I submitted a patch to remove that property because clearly, like, nobody would use this. It was added 14 years ago for a feature that never got implemented, right? And this went to ride the train in Firefox, and I broke like half the web because it turns out that jQuery uses that to detect whether you're running on Firefox or not. So that's really great. Only at JSConf do you get applause for breaking like half the web. That's awesome. Thank you very much. I feel much better about it already. So yeah, removing this kind of stuff is very hard. It has to be very slow. We have removed stuff in the past successfully. And E4X, for example, was removed after some pain. So it is possible, it simply takes a lot of time.
I think there's a biologist who wants to breed chickens to express what are called genetic atavisms, chickens with teeth, like dinosaurs. Because that old enabled taint method is still down there in their DNA somewhere. Maybe they can get teeth. Maybe enabled taint will come back. I don't know.
Actually, I have a very hard question for Andreas, I think, because he talked so much today about JavaScript being a great target for compilation. So when should we use Rust, and when should we use JavaScript?
So Rust was designed for a very specific purpose, to really write system parts. And there's actually no necessary hard distinction between these two languages. I already talked to the team whether Rust should be able to target JavaScript. There might be some cases where it makes sense to use Rust to implement something that runs on top of the web stack in JavaScript. And there might be other cases where it makes sense to implement system parts as JavaScript. So I don't think there's a necessary order there. And I would be surprised if we don't have a Rust to JavaScript compiler at some point.
Yeah, I agree. The Rust's main sweet spot is safety with the same memory control that C++ gives you.
All right. And you mentioned types today. And in the community, we see a lot of different projects for tackling types in JavaScript. So we have @script now coming out, TypeScript, Flow, Dart, just kidding. So what do we do? Which one do we use? What do you think about these projects? Do you think, once again, that the better one will win and the rest will die out?
I think we're still in the early days. There's been some interest in ECMA TC39, the standards body, about standardizing something to do with types, maybe based on TypeScript and Flow, both using the colon annotation like the ML languages do, like Pascal, if you remember that does, Algol languages, some of them anyway. That syntax, var x:t, you can't just standardize it. It has meaning. If you define it, it has something to say about the types system and the type expressions or type annotations. So we're not going to rush to standardize that. The only thing we're doing now is saying that no engine can go claim as an extension on its own that colon after the name in the declaration. That's reserved to the future standards that might standardize it. I think TypeScript and then Flow, inspired by it, much more powerful, should keep going. I think the best thing they can do is get adoption. The worst thing that you could do is make design by committee, union of all the systems or intersection of all the systems or some committee Frankenstein standard. That would be terrible.
All right, and the final question for you, Brendan. Someone was wondering about what are the biggest lessons or takeaways from TC39 and in general the approach that has been taken towards improving JavaScript? And where do you see that going in the future?
It's been a long road. I think that my big takeaways in like 20-year terms are you need competition to drive the vendors to cooperate in the standards bodies. Then you need good social relations among the members of the committee. Even, Croc is welcome back anytime in my book. You need to get on this rapid release footing we're trying to get on with ES7. You don't want to do big, indefinite projects in software or in standardization because they always suffer scope creep and the world moves out from under them and they become irrelevant dinosaurs. So some kind of rapid release footing with implementers constantly implementing. W3C, really originally the WhatWG, tried to get browsers to do this with HTML5, and that became a big living document standard. But I think now things are getting across the web space onto a faster cycle, and that's one of the biggest lessons for me.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, guys.